All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to let people get logged on here. Thanks for joining us. This is Analytics in Action, the how-to webinar series by Association Analytics. Believe it or not, this is the very last session we'll be having this year. Can't believe it's Thanksgiving next week already. This year flew by. While we're getting people logged in, instead of our fun question, I'm going to give you a task, so I apologize. But we want your feedback on the series for this year. So I know a lot of you have come to quite a few different sessions. So we're kind of looking for feedback on what we did this year and then other topics for next year. So I'm going to throw a SurveyMonkey link in the chat. And if you guys can just let us know how we're doing and the topics of interest for next year, we would very much appreciate it.
Can I take the survey?
I was just going to say, Bill and Greg, I mean, I guess you can take it, but you can just tell me separately.
Fair enough.
Oh, so you helped come up with some of these suggested topics. All right, give it just a few more seconds. See the attendee list still running up.
Thanks everybody for taking some time to join us today. I know in our busy everyday lives, it can be hard to carve out 30 minutes that becomes an hour for us, but we appreciate your not only attending our webinars, we really appreciate all the participation we get from you. These things are way more fun for us because of all the chat, comments, the questions we get from you, and the survey results that let us know how we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
All
now,
right,
if we can only get a little more participation on our wall, then we'd all be set.
Oh, yes. Okay, we'll get to the wall. Let me do the intros first. All right, we'll get started. So today, like I mentioned, is the last session for our Association Analytics and Action series we've been doing this year. So this is part 2 of our survey data webinar. We'll be talking about analysis and action with survey data. And like always, we have Bill and Greg here. So Bill is our SVP of Strategy and Solutions. Greg is our VP of Sales, and they're going to take it away. I think Greg is going to talk about his wall again, if you missed that last week.
Yeah, awesome. Well, welcome everybody. We're going to go through our agenda today. We're going to do some quick polls and surveys at the beginning to ask you where you are with some of these things. We're going to continue on our 5-step process. This time we're doing our analyzing and our acting, and there's a lot of stuff we're going to be doing in Power BI, managing data, looking at answers, taking away what our takeaways are, and then we're going to summarize this whole process, everything from soup to nuts, how we got started and where we finished. Who is Association Analytics? We keep bringing this up because I hear people tell us all the time we were on that webinar, but I have no idea who you were. So we are Association Analytics. We're a solutions company right here in Arlington, Virginia, with our main goal of helping associations leverage their data, right? Understanding that we have a lot of data in multiple systems, whether it's our survey results, our retention numbers, our event attendance, our community data, our email marketing data, all these topics we've been talking about. And it's hard to get insight out of that data. And we need a trusted partner to work with that does everything from data governance, data cleanup and quality, integrating our data together and providing visualizations that help us make decisions. And that's where we come in as a partner to help do all that stuff. So what's up with my wall? Decorate my wall. This is a real call out. We've got some things going on already, and I've got more stuff that I'm told's in the mail. We moved into a new office, and I've got this beautiful wall behind me that's freshly painted and ready to go. And I want to decorate it with lots of fun stuff that you all send me. I want your association logos, your advocacy logos, your fun things you send me. So far, we've got a mutual friend, Mark Lowry. His head is on the wall. Ben Muscolino over at AMS Geeks sent me his logo. I've been told there's a Lamar Jackson poster in the mail. A mutual friend is a big Ravens fan with me. I think that's going up to mess with the Washington football fans here. But I'd love to see your logo. There's a lot of people on the call today who have great organizations, and I want to see you all represented on my wall as well. Talk to your marketing team, find something, stick it in the mail, ship it to me, and you will be on the wall for all of next year for our webinar series. You can be on the Wall of Fame as well. So serious call. Send me your stuff. It goes on the wall. That's all there is to it. So we want to hear from you at the beginning of all of these. We'd love to ask you questions. And our question today is a little bit more in-depth than our regular questions. How does your association utilize survey data, right? So we don't, we're using a native function in our survey tool. We're using Excel. We're using Power BI. We hire some consultants. How do you guys do that? What's your process for doing it? Tell us in the radio buttons there. Pick the one that applies best.
And while you're doing that, if of course, if you do something other than that, right, then tell us about that in the chat. So this one is kind of more focused on the tools that you use, if any. So we're talking about how do you analyze here. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so we have small minority, 7% say that we don't. Well, you're in the right place, right? For those people there, a lot of people are using the native functionality in their survey tool, so that's the biggest one at 36%. So I think there's a lot of utility in that. Another 29, almost 30% are using Excel, the #1 analytics tool, for all associations. That's in air quotes. Some are pushing things out to Power BI or Tableau, so that's about 20% of the people. And so that's what we're going to do. That's kind of what we recommend. There are some advantages to doing that. And then 10%, just over 10%, hire experts to handle everything for them. Any surprises there, Greg?
More people than I thought are already using Power BI and consultants. I thought it would be way more Excel heavy.
Okay.
And Aaron
yeah,
said,
so
for their industry event, they use a consultant, but for the short surveys, they use SurveyMonkey. I find that's probably really common, right? We do a lot of surveys throughout the year. We use one tool for some surveys. We use a consultant for other surveys where we need their, expertise. Makes sense. Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the sweet spot for us, like the kind of things that we'll be talking about today. It's, you definitely want to take it seriously. You want to prepare, you want to prep, you want to market, but this is not necessarily, like your big annual survey, right? That you'd want to hire an external consultant for, right? This is the, more of like the stand-in for something like that, right? In the absence of something long and serious like that, you can still get some good results by using surveys on like a smaller.
So the next question here is, how do you share the data? So, we talk with a lot of associations who do surveys, and my next question is, what do you do with that data? Do you email specific answers to specific individuals? Bill, you asked question 10, here's your answer. Do you send out a link so everybody can see all the results? Do you present a small group of people, look at the data, and then present it to the larger team? Is this a big collaborative effort where everybody from all these departments is in a big conference room talking about it, discussing what's going on? Or does it just sit on the virtual shelf and collect dust? How do you do your data analyzation here? What do you do to understand it? I can tell you which one we did, because I was in that meeting not too long ago.
So surprisingly, I was able to vote in this poll, but not the first one. All right, let's take a look. Okay, so over half take small groups and present to the team. So I think that's great to hear. That's the method that I prefer. I don't know that there's one specific right one, but if there's one of these that I would choose, I think that would be the one. I think about 15% are emailing those specific answers to people. So Greg brought this up as something that's commonly done. I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't think many people are doing that. Many associations are doing that, but this is a bigger number than I thought. 14% are just blasting out that link. In our experience, I think that link, often goes unclicked, right? Or if it is clicked, it's not well understood. So if you're doing that, I recommend maybe reconsidering that and opting for the small group, or maybe something a little bit more collaborative. And then 10% are just shelving it, right? So these are those people that we talk to all the time that do that survey at the end of the LMS course or at the end of the meeting and don't really take any action on it, right, Greg? I mean, they don't, they're not able to analyze it. Anybody else Any other sort of cases that, anything that we didn't list here, or any particular, stories about valuable survey data that are getting shelved are always interesting to hear. If you have one of those, you can go ahead and put it in the chat.
And I think today we're going to make that argument that middle option, the small group of team members analyzes it and then distributes it to the larger group. I think we're going to argue that that's probably our most successful process for a number of reasons. We'll get into that as we walk through it today. So today we're analyzing. We are looking at our data, and we're going to analyze it in a number of ways. And then our goal is to take action, right? We didn't survey just because we were curious. We surveyed because we plan on taking direct actions based on our data. And hopefully today we'll get to some actions we plan on taking. So how do we analyze all this? Let's recap how we got here, right? We sent out, we designed our survey. We had our executive tell us that member experience was key. We wanted to better understand that, and we wanted to do a survey to get to that answer. We spent a lot of time planning our survey, our questions, what type of questions we were going to ask. We marketed our survey and we measured different channels, email, Facebook, social media. We did multiple calls of action to different populations with different reasons. And we monitored our performance from our 6,000 calls to action. 1.2% of those people participated in our survey. I think we can do better next year, but we had some lessons learned there. And then we collected all of our data, and that's where we are today. So what's up next?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of just remind you back at when we talked last week about all the things that you have to do to prepare, to design your survey and all of that. We told you that you should start with some goals, right? And your goals should be kind of like business questions, right? So what are the things that you're after? What are your intents, right? What are you trying to find out with your survey? And so for us, and we wanted to start with some questions that would kind of be useful for, for A2 as a company, but also that are analogous to the kinds of things that the audience, right, that in associations that you're sort of confronted with. So, what's the level of readiness or maturity in the current market? So that could be for, for a particular product or service, or maybe some sort of membership bundle that you're considering. How should your educational content be focused in the coming year, right? Or just content in general, right? How should your product development or just your internal resources be, be prioritized, right? I mean, we're all trying to do more with less. We have, probably in many cases, fewer resources than we had, say, 18 months or so ago. And so we have to be really judicious with how we deploy them. So these are the goals that we started with, and there are, but we also want to be able to filter, right? We want to be able to slice and dice. That's kind of the things that we're always talking about in all of these data sessions, right? So we have our org demographics, like the type and the staff size. We have our individual demographics. We care about the function and the role of the individuals that are responding to the survey. We care about behaviors, right? So what about, what's the priority level? You'll see that a lot in the analysis. That's really a big, a crux of, of a lot of the different types of analyses that we're doing. Do you focus on data quality? What sources do you keep your most important data in? Things like that. Which departments in your org rely on data the most, right? So those are the kind of behaviors that we care about. And then you always want to augment those actual behaviors with ad. So we complemented that with some Likert questions, right? So we didn't just say, is your data good or bad, right? Is the quality high or low, right? Although we did ask questions like that, we said something like, do the business users have confidence in the accuracy of the data, right? So it's more about your attitude and your opinion about the data rather than, an objective fact, is it good or bad? So anyway, both types of questions are valuable, but you do have to be deliberate about, how and why you're using each one of those. Any comments on goals or questions, Greg?
I think one of the things that may be obvious to you at this point is we did not ask our goals weren't the questions, right? So we didn't say, hey, we're planning content for next year. What should we do? I mean, we did that in our survey earlier, but not in our survey we did today. But like when we built our survey, the goals and the long-term objectives we had weren't our questions. Our questions got us to the answers we could use to derive what our long-term goals were. And there was a little bit of separation there between like, what are we really trying to know? And then what questions do we want to ask to help us get there? And I think that's an important part of the being intentional when we design the survey. We didn't just come out and ask straight away, these were the questions we want answers to. We ask a lot of questions around those things because we wanted to derive the answers ourselves based on what people were telling us.
All right, cool. All right, so now that we have our goals, here's kind of the process that we're going to go through to analyze. So the first thing is review the results, and by this I mean go to the source system where you've conducted your survey. So we use SurveyMonkey in this case, and you sort of review or preview the results there. And they have some good tools, right? They have some good reports. They have some capability to filter. I really like the idea of this summary page, and this is in the free version, by the way. You get this this cool summary data, like estimated completion rate and estimated time to complete. Our actual numbers were better than that, right? We had a much higher completion rate. People completed the survey in 5 minutes, which was really close to our target. It summarizes all the different ways that you tried to collect survey responses and how successful you were with each of those. All of which is really great, and highly recommend using all that. Now, when you get to the actual analysis of the questions, it's that's where you start to run into a few limitations. I mean, I mentioned that they have filters, they have rules that you can apply, all of which are cool. But when you actually present them, you know, grouping the questions and showing them, you know, side by side or together in different ways, filtering the questions with each other on a local population of questions. Those are the sorts of things that are maybe a little bit more difficult to do. So with that, you know, just kind of to summarize, there are some limitations in the type of analysis that you can do and the way that you can show that. You know, but beyond that, there can be licensing issues. You don't necessarily want, you know, your entire organization to have a license to some survey tool. If they do, sorry, I just saw the chat. Is it? Am I sounding okay now?
You sound fine. You're freezing a little bit. I just wanted everybody to know, and I sent it to the wrong group, obviously. If you see Bill freezing a little bit, he's got some internet issues, but we're good to go. It's not on your end; it's on our end. Just keep pressing on, and don't worry about it. We're good.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. So the data is siloed naturally, right? I mean, it's everything is confined to what you asked in the survey. And so if you don't then take it out and put it somewhere that's aggregated with your other data, then it's obviously going to remain that way. In order to do that, you have to deal with integrations, which which is kind of a sore subject, you know, for many associations. And then sharing and collaboration, right? Getting back to the licensing issue, it can be difficult to share the results of the survey, of the analysis, to collaborate over that, to make adjustments and that sort of thing. So for those reasons, we recommend exporting the data and using a separate tool, right? We use Power BI today. You can use Tableau, you could use some others. And in fact, SurveyMonkey themselves just kind of anticipates this. They recommend it even. So they have some pre-built integrations that allow you to do that. Or, in most cases, it's going to be fine to export the data and import it into your tool using Excel.
I would even say if you're not going to import the data somewhere else, just export it. What happens when that SurveyMonkey account goes dormant or the person with the login doesn't work there anymore and we can't access those results? Worst case scenario is just export the answers and save them somewhere that's long-term storage inside your organization. Hopefully not on one person's computer, on some sort of shared drive where we can access it later. We don't want to lose that institutional knowledge when that license goes away or when that computer crashes. We want to hold on to that in a centralized repository for long-term storage. So minimal effort here, just save it on our shared drive so everybody can see it down the road.
That's a great point. So one of the good and bad things about a tool like SurveyMonkey is that it's so easy and cheap and free even to get started with something small. There can be many SurveyMonkey accounts within. I bet there's multiple in every association that's here. And so getting those all together in a way that's meaningful for others besides yourself. Okay, right. So we So we export the data. The next thing that we have to do once we've exported it is clean and transform that data. And that can be done in Excel, right? You can eliminate null values, you can eliminate blank columns, things like that. I think it's a little bit easier, right? If you bring it into a tool like Power BI, which you see on the screen, the ribbons and the commands and things are very similar to what you're used to in Excel, but doing things like removing the blank columns is really easy. The null values, you can split the columns, right? Sometimes you get combinations of data inside SurveyMonkey, whether it's like a time and date or if it's an address or something. There are lots of reasons why you might want to split that data into multiple columns. That's very easy to do in Power BI. Speaking of columns, there's something that we did with this data here, which is called unpivot, right? So it's, if you think of a pivot table, it's this functionality where you take something that is, which has lots of columns, and basically you make it lots of rows instead, right? So you have this skinnier table, which has lots of rows. So in our case, we originally had 33 columns, right? And there were 93 rows, one for each response. That's how many responses we got to this, to the survey. But, for Likert responses, right, we want to unpivot that so that each response becomes its own row. And so we ended up with 23 columns instead of 33, but 837 rows, right? Because each, what was once one row became 9 because there were 9 different Likert questions, right? So one for each column. Okay. So that, there's lots of other ways to use that. That was just one simple way that we did in this case, just to sort of show you some of the things you can do, right? And the other big benefit
of an ETL process where we extract, transform, and load the data. That's part of our enterprise data warehouse. Today, you manually, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Please.
That hung up, but I
transform the data manually.
I did, yeah. So I mean, when we talk about ETL, that's an automated process that takes your data from your sources to some sort of data warehouse. And very often there's a lot of data wrangling and transformation that happens automatically in that process. In the case of survey data, most of the time, this is data that we can upload ourselves, and then we can manually transform. And if we spend a little bit of time doing that, it's gonna pay off big time when we go to visualize that data, which is a great segue to our next slide.
How long did that take?
15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe.
All right. I often think of this transformation as this really hard technical process where you're like coding, you're plugged in, you're seeing the matrix, and it's way easier than that.
Yeah, it is. This is a relatively simple data set. And as far as the unpivoting is concerned, I did only the unpivot on the Likert questions. There probably were some other places you could have done that. I did not create any calculated fields, right? I didn't use any programming language to create measures or anything like that. This was really just cleaning up the data. So it was more like cleanup more so than transformation in this case. But the reason we do that is so that we can build some visualizations, that look kind of like this. And so bringing it into something like Tableau or Power BI, obviously the visual tools are way better than what you get in Excel or what you can do inside of SurveyMonkey. But you also have that benefit, as Greg described, is having it, once you've cleaned that data set, you can use and reuse that, create different derivatives, and you're always going to have that when you bring in your next survey, you'll be able to compare them side by side, and it's going to be much easier in that case. Okay, so we're going to get into the analysis.
Always going to have access to that data.
That's right. All right, so we'll jump into the analysis piece in our tools in a minute. But what are we going to do with it after that, Greg? What about taking action?
Yeah, so this is where the exciting part happens is once we've combined those data sets, we can start taking action. And when we're looking at taking action, a lot of times the insight we were looking for wasn't the exact question we asked. So when we did our survey at the front, it's like, hey, I sent question 4 over to Kathy. She asked that question. The problem we're running into is the answer wasn't question 4. It was question 4, 7, and 9 combined and pivoted with a filter, that really got us to the action we wanted to take. And you'll see it in a second here. Bill and I were looking at this data, and I like to ask Bill tough questions out of the blue. He'd build something one way, and I'd say like, hey, but what about this way? And if you add that filter, and he would be like, yeah, let me move this around and let me check this box off, and here's your answer. And that's really where I think the value for me as a non-techie became clear to me, is as we're in that collaborative meeting, we're all talking about our data, asking questions, the ability to act and refine and test and look at the data all in real time without having to go back and rebuild it. Let me update my Excel spreadsheet, give me a couple hours, I'll get that answer for you. Because we invested that time at the front end, it made our meeting where we reviewed the data and talked about it so much more valuable, because there wasn't a question I could ask that he couldn't answer with just a quick, checkbox here and a copy and paste there. We were getting our answers fairly quick.
All right. Good. Let's take a look at some data here. So do we see, do we see the demo site, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, so this is our demo site, right? We have this thing called custom reports. And in that custom reports space, I've started to build something in Power BI. I've published it up to the Power BI service. And from there, we connect to Acumen. And what's cool about that is there's no licensing involved here, right? So we have one free SurveyMonkey license. We've uploaded that to our custom workspace. And now this is available to anyone in my organization and people external to the organizations that I want to give access to. So we looked last week at our demographics. We looked at the multiple choice questions and we visualized those. We started to get a feel for how the answers to those specific questions broke down. We looked at rankings, right? So we asked, rank from 1 to 5, those that rely on data the most to the least. And this is what we found. So we'll jump into that a little bit. We looked at like responses, right? Which is agree, strongly agree to strongly disagree, across a bunch of different dimensions, things like, can you find the data you're looking for? Do you rely on data to operate more effectively? Do you have a data strategy? Things like that. And what's interesting about this is that each one of those is its own visualization, because that's that data, it was in that columnar format, okay? Now, then we also looked at some free text, right? Biggest obstacle, how do you make decisions? And for this is the out-of-the-box free Power BI word cloud. So there are definitely some cool things that you can do with data. Some people that are watching are probably like, yeah, Bill, word clouds are lame. We want to do text analytics. Absolutely, you can do that. That does cost, typically, but those services are available through Power BI, through Tableau, through Amazon, for lots of services where you can send them. You can basically ship them a file with a lot of text data, and they can send you back something that will analyze the sentiment on that data, extract the topics, things like that, right? So for this, remember, this is not, the big expensive annual survey that we hire the consultant for. This is more like, hey, look, we're trying to do better, doing more with less, right? We're trying to get some actionable data, for a small amount of effort and money in most cases. And so we're going to use word clouds, right? How do we use data in the organization, and what's our wish list? If you guys remember, this is the one where the question was kind of poorly worded. This was a lesson learned for us, right? A lot of people skipped this question altogether. And so this is one of those, test and learn kind of things when you go to, when you consider how you design your survey. All right, so now, so then we did some additional, transformation on the data, and that allowed us to look at the Likert questions altogether, right? So now I can just go to this box called Likert question, which is basically just a slicer that I made. And we can now, if I click here, you see that we're looking at the answers to the different questions dynamically, right, as I choose the question, okay? So all of that is kind of the preface to those 3 questions, that we had to answer. So I wanted to show you how this looks inside of Acumen. It's this is web-based Power BI, so it's this is basically coming from the Power BI workspace. So I'm going to go over I'm going to go over to that now so we can see how it looks. Okay, so the first thing that we ask is, what is what's the maturity level, right? What's the market, the market sort of readiness, right? I mean, what's the state of the market when it comes to data, right? And you might be asking the same kinds of things when it comes to your membership, right? How ready are they, to learn about a new topic or to move to a new model, these kinds of things. So for these, Likert questions are really good, right? And now that we're able to look at them all together like this, we can really see some patterns that kind of jump out at us, right? So the royal blue and the pink are they agree and strongly agree in this case. And so by looking at that, just at a quick glance, we can see that we're doing good when it comes to informing our operations with data, with targeting our content based on data, with making decisions and validating assumptions based on data, right? So all of these ones that have a big bar where it's blue and a lot of pink. So what's interesting is that's especially true, right? We had that question about the priority level of data, right? And if this is especially true, if we just look at those where data is a high or a very high priority, right? So now in this case, now we're talking about targeting content and using data to validate assumptions. I mean, we're over 70% of associations in that space that that are doing these things with their data based on their level of priority. All right. So let me just take that off. Now, where's the market struggling? Right. So we're struggling. We say we're looking for disagree or we're looking for strongly disagree. Right. So we can see right away there's a couple of big green ones here. Right. Documented the places where where we're struggling. And the other place is we can't find the data, that we need.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Everything is
Siri can't find it either.
I know. It was my phone last time. Now it's the watch. All right. So we can't find the data that we need, and we don't have that documented data strategy. And now this is true even if I say among those where it's high and very high, we still have a struggle with the documented data strategy, and we still struggle with finding the things that we need. Now if I change it to not the high and very high, but the low and very low, then obviously it's going to be even more true in that case. Okay, so the point is that with Likert questions like this, the big value in that is being able to look at all of these together, using some of those filters, right? We could filter by large and small, by different roles and things as well, and see how things change, and you get that holistic picture of the maturity level, right? So all of these questions together were, pretty deliberately chosen to get a feel for the maturity in a particular area, right? Go ahead and drop any questions that you have on that into the chat, and we're going to move on to our next question, which was about educational content. Okay, so this one is pretty simple. Now you'll notice that all of these charts here, you've seen those before, right? So when we first brought the data in, we decided to visualize and model out our main questions, right? So we modeled out our demographics, right? So we visualized those, right? We did our multiple choice questions and we visualized those. And now what happens is I can just go here and I'm going to do a Control-C. We all know how to do that, right? And then I'm going to go to my educational content. And basically how I made that is I just said, okay, Control-V, and I put it there, right? I rearranged them around a little bit on the page, but this is, so I didn't really even create anything new when I'm doing my analysis, right? I drug some things over and made a few charts and visualizations in the beginning. But once I did that, it was more a matter of deciding which ones I wanted to use with each other and pasting them on the same canvas. And they naturally, when you use Power BI, all of these things are automatically interactive, right? So everything that I click on one, you'll notice that it's going to filter everything else, right? Okay, so who makes data a priority, right? This is a big one, right? This question we're asking all the time, right? So this is the priority level. This was one of our questions. Is data a high or very high priority? And then we're going to say, what is the, what functional roles, right? Does that involve? So when we say high or very high, marketing is big, right? A lot of us have our important data in our marketing systems, but if we start to look into that a little bit further, maybe we care, maybe we want to look at executive, right? So for executive focused content, it looks a little bit different. It's more kind of evenly spread. There's events, there's marketing, there is community, but if I look at, now I'm wondering, what about size, right? So this is, these are executives, right? But what if I want to look at size? I'm going to go and take my filter panel, and I'm going to just say, what about our large associations? Right. So now if I check large, I see that massively changes things. Now learning is suddenly really important. So if I'm thinking about the business areas that my content should be focused on, right? To the extent that I want to bring in larger customers or executive customers in larger associations, then content that's focused on learning is going to be very beneficial for me, right? I mean, that's not obviously the only answer that you can derive from this. That's certainly one direction that we can go. And I think there's a solid foundation for that based on the data that we've collected.
So I want to jump in for 1 second, Bill, give you a breather. As we're looking at this, what Bill's doing here is what we did in that small collaborative group, right? As a fundamental starting point, we built out our baseline, like these are the questions, these are the answers, how we can use them. And then in that smaller group, we started looking through those answers and found the insights that we thought were valuable. And then we published those up to Acumen. So when we did that executive meeting and we told them these are all the insights we found, we weren't jumping between multiple pages to get there. We said, listen, here's the insight we found. It's pre-built on a page. It's pre-filtered on the page. Look at what we're showing you. And the goal there was to focus on the specific outcomes that we were planning on taking action for, right? We were saying, you were curious, who really cares about data? From an executive decision standpoint, what moves the needle for them? It's learning and events. Like these are the things that we need to focus on for them. That's an outcome that might be really challenging to get at if I'm just looking at the survey results in SurveyMonkey, or if I'm just looking at the raw data, even in Power BI. It took us thinking about it and analyzing that data to find that insight and then build that in a way that we can present it to the executives, right? Because we know they're easily distracted and they're looking at all kind of things. We wanted to focus them on, this is the insight you need to take away. Here's the data that backs up that insight. This is the action we think we should take based on that data.
Yeah. And so another comment I want to make here is, we talked a little bit about exporting and the value and bringing the data into a tool like this. So in this case, I'm really only working with data that came from this specific survey, right? So I asked, we asked, what kind of association, what's the size of your association, what's your role, what's your function. Now, imagine in your case, you're going to be asking things like, what's your member type, or what's your career level and things like that. And even if the survey is anonymous, you're going to have aggregate data that you collect through your AMS and maybe through engagement scoring, things like that, that give you a lot more context into what is the meaning of these kinds of demographics. Like, we have job function and we have role, and those are kind of self-explanatory in a way, but in your case, it might be, say, students and young professionals and affiliate members, and based on your other analyses, that there's a real value in educational programs for young professionals or for affiliates, based on their spending or based on their trajectory in the association and things like that. So when you combine this with other, even if it's just based on your wisdom and intuition, it's already good. If you can do that, by joining tables and real data in the case of a survey that's not anonymous, maybe, then that's going to be even better. Okay.
Wait, Bill, back up. Wait. I love it when I have these realizations in real time on the webinar. So what you're saying is if I take an anonymous survey, I don't know who answered it, but I ask some proxy questions like job function and title, I can then validate those with my business data in Acumen. I have job function and title. I can go look at the products they buy. And I can say, well, in the survey, you told me you value these products. In our business data, are you buying those products? Even in an anonymous survey, if I ask the right questions, I can make those parallel comparisons.
Yeah, you definitely can do that. If you, right, in the case of
I wasn't there.
If it's not anonymous, then you can, obviously, then you can look at Greg's specific data, right, for your previous engagement. If you can't do that, then you know certain things like what member type I am, and maybe there's some effects that you know about based on region or things like that, right? Different demographics that you already track.
I never put that together. I wasn't there in my brain. So that makes so much sense. So we don't need to know everybody's name when they take the survey. If we ask the right proxy questions like job function and title, like association size and industry, we can then compare that to the business data we do have and either validate or break those notions or say like what's broken here, what is or isn't working. I think I just had an aha moment there. Hopefully some of our attendees had a similar aha moment along with me, and I'm not the only one.
All right. So here we are. We're kind of getting towards the end here. This is about products, right? So at the end of the day, we're in the business of making products and services related to analytics. You're obviously in the business of making products and services related to the subject matter and the industry that your members care about. And we're always in position of trying to decide how to spend our resources, right? We can't do all the things that we want to do. We have to prioritize, and we should do that deliberately based on what our members want. And so, like Greg was saying earlier, we don't just say, "Hey, look, what do you want us to do this year?" What we do ask are things like, "Who relies on data the most in your organization?" Right? And what we did is we had you rank 1 through 5, based on these 5 departments: executives, membership, marketing, IT, and research. And when we do that, the results are quite interesting. So let's see if I've got a filter on here somewhere. Okay, so this is 837 is our count, right? Which, remember, right, our actual count is 93. So we have 837 because some of them are overrepresented based on how we've unpivoted. If I want to show the exact number, I can go and say, well, I want the count distinct, right? Which is, we know that they're exactly 93. But in this case, I went ahead and left it as just the count, because the numbers get too small, right? Basically, if you do this thing, but it's not skewing the results in any way to have it like this. Okay, so the first thing we notice is that across all of our categories, membership is the lowest, so that's like the first rank. Then we have executives and marketing, which are kind of in the middle, and we have research and IT, which are not many people chose those as the number 1, so they're kind of they have a higher number, which means that fewer associations rely on them heavily. And so then we asked this other question, which was part of our Likert, which is we rely on data to operate more efficiently. And this was kind of a choice here, right? I went ahead with this Likert, which filters everything the same way. The other choice was I could have gone with the multiple choice question, where we asked explicitly, remember, we have this one about priority level for collection and analysis of data for decisions. Again, I always could have, instead of the Likert, maybe I put this one here instead. Right, it's just a cut and paste, and then I could remove this one and put this here. But I think effectively they have a similar effect on our outcome in this case. So So we'll stick with the Laker, or what do you think? Let's
Get crazy and change it on the fly.
yeah, we'll change it on the fly. All right, so go back and grab it again. Sorry about that. Okay. So overall, right? So we have overall our membership's the lowest, and we have executive, and we have marketing. So let's look at this cohort, which are high and very high in terms of priority. So that changes things pretty significantly, right? So we have membership and marketing, which are now equal. Our executives have kind of taken over first place. If we look at, say, our large associations, you can see how that changes things as well. So we have our executives sort of separating a little bit in terms of becoming more important. But then we have our there. Okay. So now we have mediums, and we have professionals. So the point I was trying to make here is that when we go to the medium and large professional associations, then clearly membership, membership takes priority as the one that relies on data the most. So what we're trying to do here is, again, with the benefit of additional context that we might have about different member types and their demographics and things, we're using all this to make decisions about the products and services that we're going to prioritize in the coming year. All right. So again, all this is here in our web-based portal, right? So everybody has access to this. We can building the things out into Power BI. We can then publish that up to a site like this where everyone has access to it. No additional logins, right? No licensing, for that survey tool. All right.
So let's wrap this up and get to some key takeaways.
Let's do it.
So as we think about some of our key takeaways, I want to stress a couple things. One is you can't just phone in the survey. You can't just do it for survey's sake. You've got to set some goals with analytics in mind. We've got a survey with intent, because remember, we took a lot of time as we prepared this survey, right? We took time to market the survey. We took time to collect the data. Bill had to transform it and pivot it and put it in Power BI. We had to meet as a committee to analyze that data, and investing that time and effort to design it and market it wasn't free for our association. We have limited capacity too. So we wanted to make sure we were getting good results for this, right? We said, somebody asked on a webinar earlier, is there ever a reason not to do a survey? And our answer is, if you're not going to be intentional, you're not going to take action, it's not worth doing. So we spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I'd encourage you, the more time and effort you can invest in your surveying and analyzing the results, the more value you can get out of it. I would say find a tool set, right? We not only built a team with different levels of expertise, we found tools. Some of them were off the shelf, some of them were free, some of them we own because we had the product. And then we tested and refined. We learned a lot of lessons as we went through the process, and we documented all of that. So next year when we go to do a survey, we'll know which questions worked and which didn't. We'll know how our marketing materials worked and which promotions were successful. We'll know what to expect from separate channels. And we'll have a good idea about how to run our survey more effectively than we did in the past. Now, Bill, I have a question, and I don't know if we have an answer or not. Let's find out in real time. And maybe people in the audience can tell us their answer, because I honestly don't know the answer. A lot of times I've said we should ask consistent questions. If you want to know the differences, you should ask the same questions survey after survey. But we've also said you should test and refine. There are a lot of lessons learned. So how do we put the two of those worlds together? I want to ask the same questions every year in my survey, but I learned that I did some dumb things, and I have some new things I want to learn. So I want to change my survey. Where do we land at the end of the day? Do I stay consistent with my questions? Do I change my questions and add new ones? How do I fix these two worlds? Maybe some members of our audience can tell us what they think. Do we stick it out? Do we change things? Do we find some middle ground? How do we solve that problem?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, right? Greg and I talked about this. We didn't really have an answer. At least one that's a lot of things. You just have to do like a cost benefit analysis, really. I mean, because we've designed our questions with intent, we've been deliberate about the outcomes that we want to achieve from those questions. And I think adding questions is generally okay, right? I mean, the real problem that you get into is when you change the format, right? You just change the format around altogether and substitute out similar types of questions. I think you want to try to get away from doing that if you can. But if it's a brand new question that's after a brand new goal that you add, I think that's probably what I would go to first if I want to make a change.
What about our under-answered question? Are we just going to remove that for next year? Or are we going to give them options?
I mean, yeah, and I think also deleting, especially if they're ineffective or if people don't answer them, or you find that it doesn't give you anything valuable. I think also deleting is okay. Right, because then it's just not going to be there going forward, and that's pretty easy to sort out. You can even exclude it from your results. The real issue is, when you are essentially replacing similar questions, like questions that have similar purpose, with just like a tweak to the wording or something like that. So, again, my advice would be to try to be really deliberate with that on the front end, so you don't have to do it. But adding and deleting is going to be less problematic than changing things, one for another of similar type. So last thing I would say is, obviously, this is a business person's guide to how to do this with survey results. We didn't hire an expert for this. We didn't even really consult the experts in our own company for how to do this. We wanted this to be an experiment on how business staff can push out a survey. We can market it, right? We can, bring in the results, and without the benefit of a professional business or data analyst, we can analyze those results and take action for our business. So hopefully you've got some tips and maybe some inspiration to try and do that in your own association. All right. So that takes us to the end. This is the last one for 2021. We're going to be returning in January with a brand new installment of the How To webinar series. Hopefully Greg's wall will be a lot more crowded by then. And we look forward to your feedback.
What if we get terrible topics and no one wants us to return? Are we coming back?
I don't know. I mean, we're data driven. So if that's what the data tells us, then maybe we'll have to make that decision based on the results. So give us your feedback.
I've been looking at the results and we've been getting good feedback so far. So I'm thinking we're coming back, and I'm hoping we get some really good topics from our attendees today and throughout the past. And if you want to be a guest presenter with us, if you have a topic you're passionate about and you want to talk about how you do it, let us know. Say, hey, I want to be a guest presenter. Email us and we'll see if we can get you on the docket. If you've got ideas you want us to tackle, let us know. And if you have a question and you're like, I don't even know, how would you do this? Send it to us and we'll chomp it over and we'll do some research and we'll make a presentation on it. I want to thank everybody for attending. This has been a lot of fun for us this year. Email Katrina there if you have anything, and we're happy to have you. If you've got something for my wall, send it to me and you will be on the wall. And I hope to see everybody in 2022 when we pick this up in January.
All right. Thank you.